Hi, everybody. Welcome back. We are here for another one of your questions about work. And as we've done a few times over the course of the last few months, we are really happy when we get to have one of our question askers or answerers, either way, be one of our own teammates. And so for those of you joining us for the first time, I'm Roy. I'm a startup investor in the future of work. And I'm here with Aaron Francis, who's been spending, what has it been, like a month and a half so far, something like that? Yeah.
Yeah.
And so Aaron is a student, or wait, have you already graduated? I don't even know.
Graduate in December.
In
Senior.
December. Okay. So at North Carolina Agricultural and Technical State University, we've been working with him as we do with our summer fellows on a range of projects. And in particular, he's doing one that we've been promoting on social media about one of our portfolio companies, Replit, that itself backs founders. And so they're going to do their first demo hour. And so, Aaron, your question today.
Well, going through life, especially being a person of color, we find ourselves in situations where we might not feel as adequate or as, qualified for a position. So I guess, Roy, being that you've been in different industries, how have you dealt with imposter syndrome and dealing with breaking into industries that you may not be completely qualified for?
All I've done is jobs for which I was not qualified. Now, as you point out, it may be that, of course, I have no idea what the experience is like for a person of color. So I'll offer my experience, and then I'll be curious to hear what you think. But my basic view is I used to start out thinking everybody else knows what they're doing and I don't. And therefore, I don't belong here and I'm a faker. And it's only some period of time before they kind of find me out and realize I'm no good and send me home, kind of thing. And like, what childhood psychology does that come from? I don't know. But my sense as I've talked to people is pretty much everybody feels it. And I realized a couple things. The first thing I realized is succeeding at something does not require that you think you belong there at first. You can succeed with discomfort about whether you belong there. And I've worked in government, I've worked in big consulting, big media companies, started a company, now an investor. I was never confident that I belonged, ever. I'm still not confident I belong. And so that's one thing, is just to learn that you can succeed despite the discomfort. Now, that doesn't make the discomfort okay, because you still feel it. And my awareness, the thing that worked for me on that, I definitely feel a lot less discomfort than I used to. And the reason for that, I think, is honestly just repetition. It's being in that situation again and again and again, trying to observe that other people may feel a certain way as well, getting to know people and realizing how they feel. And, one of the things I've noticed is that it doesn't matter what level you're at, people still feel that way. And it just seems, I'm not saying everybody feels it to the same degree, but as a person who's definitely suffered with lots of imposter syndrome, and I'm public about it on my LinkedIn, my guess is that it's kind of uncorrelated. Like the idea that, if only I achieve X, then I won't feel that way anymore. Once I get this promotion, or once, the boss says I did a good job, I won't feel this way, is bullshit. I think it's basically unrelated to that. It's mostly an inside job of how you think about yourself. And I'm just, and so then, by the way, the practical thing that I just do is just start trying and assume. Now I do this thing where when I get into something new, I kind of both assume that I don't really know what I'm doing and assume that I know what I'm doing well enough to just start trying, and then pay attention when you're wrong. Because, by the way, a frequent thing that can happen with sufferers of imposter syndrome that I've noticed is they become so insecure about whether they belong that they can't actually evolve and learn as well, because they're so hostile to any criticism. And so part of succeeding to me is holding in your head, it's like a musical chord where you hold in your head at the same time two things. One is, I don't belong here because nobody belongs here. And the other is, I'm going to try and see what I can do. And then one of them allows you to act and the other one allows you to learn, and you got to keep them both there. So I don't know. But like I said, Aaron, I don't know what your experience is like with it. And I'm curious how that lands with you, or what other thoughts or questions you may have.
When it comes to imposter syndrome, for me, I believe overcoming it, as you say, is to try. Repetition of accomplishing things, setting goals, and actually achieving them makes you feel more better about yourself. And sometimes it is just an insecurity feeling and I'm not good enough. But if you accomplish things and you actually build yourself up a little bit, you're going to feel like, yeah, I'm capable of doing things, and yes, I actually do belong here. Mike Cannon Brooks, this Australian billionaire, said that he's always felt like a fraud, and that if people called him out on it, then it was justified that they called him out on it, because he doesn't feel as qualified. But for him to, make billions of dollars, he had to have something, be doing something right. So I guess yes, repetition and being able to
Or he
actually
got rich.
oh that too.
We don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, let
Maya
me just say
Angelou
one
as
thing on
well.
that. Sorry, did I interrupt you, Aaron?
Oh yeah, I was gonna say Maya Angelou as well didn't feel like she should be as big as she was, but you know, she was. So sometimes it is just your, yourself and how you feel about yourself that really, hinders you.
And I just say the opposite can be true too, that the people who are extremely self-confident have no basis in it either. Now, real talk though, because sometimes people hear these things about imposter syndrome, like, yeah, I can do anything, I belong wherever. And then they figure it out and they go in that room and they're in that room and they try and they do a thing and it just goes over like a lead balloon. Like everybody's staring at you and you're like, oh shit, I fucked up. That happens too. And that's okay. Other people might think, and again, this is the part where I can only speak to my own personal experience as a man, as a white man, of a certain age, whatever. But like I've made tons of comments where I'm like, I'm on a board and I'm younger than most of the people on that board. And they're more experienced in the thing that we do. And I made this comment in one of our meetings and I felt like this dead silence passed afterward. I was like, they're probably all thinking this guy doesn't belong. And on the one hand, they probably weren't thinking that. On the other hand, they might have been thinking that. And even if they're thinking I don't belong, it's still my job to figure out how to be effective and keep going. And just because they don't think I belong doesn't mean I don't belong. They don't actually control that necessarily. And so just being really practical about recognizing, do I need them to take an action? If so, then I care what they think. Do I care what they think because it's my feelings? Okay, well then my feelings matter. I could think about that. But people will make you feel like you don't belong. Everybody. And it may happen much more to people of color, it may happen much more to women, it may happen much more to people, it may happen much more to people of all kinds, disabled people, all kinds of backgrounds. But that is them trying to use their power as a tool to accomplish what they want, whether they're doing it consciously or not. So I'm not saying that victory is other people accepting you. Victory is victory. It's getting done whatever you want to get done. Sometimes the people will accept you, sometimes they won't. And that matters, but it's not the deciding factor. So just want to make sure to warn people to expect to prepare for that.
Yeah. Also, failure is a part of life, and unless you try and fail and figure things out, how do you know what you're good at and what you're not good at?
100%. 100%. I do think the skill of failing and learning from failure, there's all these, this is maybe a conversation for another day, but of how to learn from failure and how to recover from it. There's this thing in Silicon Valley of like, we think failure is good. It's obviously bullshit on the level that, sure, failure is part of the game, but we also want to succeed. Yeah. But the truth in it is many of us have grown up in a system, and I actually fault school for a lot of this, where we're taught that if we're imperfect, something's wrong. If there's 100 questions on the test and you only get 98 of them, 97 of them, my brother, I hope he's not listening right now because anyway, my mom used to say, you bring home a 97 on the test. She'd say to me, where did you leave the other 3 points? Yep. And that is the kind of mentality that works for school, but it's not good for life. Because in life, you need to embrace failure, imperfection, all that stuff. Otherwise, stay safe and do nothing.
Yeah. Also, being assigned roles as a kid, like, yeah, you're the smart one, and when you don't live up to being smart, then your punishments and ridicule just for still being above your class but not being good up to the expectations that are sometimes unrealistic. So
yeah, I mean, look, we had that company that listed public last week, Doma, where they're trading below what the opening price was. And it's like on one level, it's like, oh, that's disappointing. On the other level, it's like, if you had told me a year ago the company would be worth what it's worth right now, I would have been thrilled. And so just putting it in perspective of what's the right comparison and just practicing that trade craft of trying to know what it is you're responsible for living up to and whatnot. But I know you mentioned there was an article about how people of color and indigenous people might particularly experience that. So I hope we'll link to it on Twitter or wherever in the comments. And, let's just all keep trying to practice this trade. One last little thing I just say is I think we all focus on our own imposter syndrome to such a degree, and I'm guilty of this, where we fail to recognize that we actually can have a role in helping others feel better about it. We can have a role, when the next Aaron comes along and you're the team lead at the workplace thinking, what if he is feeling the way I was feeling? How would I have wanted somebody to look out for me? And I think a lot of what you learn not from that kind of positive encouragement because you just learn it from the experience of life. But man, somebody reaching out and just saying in that one moment, like, hey, just so you know, you actually totally belong here. That could make a huge difference. And we all have the power to do that for somebody else, the same way somebody else has the power to do that for us. So let's do our part. All right.
Definitely
Well,
agree.
to be continued. Oh, my friend Heather, who she says A+, Roy. Thank you, Heather.
Yeah.
A person who, by the way, she's a product leader at many Silicon Valley great companies, Glassdoor, eBay, etc. I can't even remember the whole list. And I think of Heather as somebody who should never feel imposter syndrome because she's so super qualified for everything that I've seen that she's done. How she feels, I have no idea. Heather, we can talk about that separately. All right, cool. Thank you, Aaron. And for everybody who's listening, the reason we call this Is Not Advice is because neither of us knows what you should be doing with your life. We're just sharing our experiences in the hope that they're of benefit to you. So thank you, Aaron. I appreciate it. And thank you for all your contribution this summer.
No problem. Hopefully I helped.
To be continued. Oh, yeah.